And the National Assembly is urging Nigerians to study the act of lawmaking in order to make constructive criticism and hold lawmakers to account. The clerk of the National Assembly, Olatunde Ojo, made these comments during the conference of presiding officers of Nigerian legislatures. Arise correspondent Panarima Feyintola has the report.
These are speakers from the 36 states of the Federation and top leaders of the National Assembly. They have converged to discuss public perception and the role of the legislatures in democracy, particularly since the advent of the Fourth Republic. The legislature is expected to make laws that will help better the lives of its citizens. But despite several laws made, there are still concerns that the legislations have not improved the lives of its people significantly.
It is regrettable to state, however, that the public perception of the legislation in Nigeria is often slanted in the direction of negative criticism. And that is why the theme of the meeting, public perception of the role of the legislature, post-legislative scrutiny, and the independence of the legislature is very instructive and strategic. A case worthy of note is the recent overblown public scrutiny generated over the leakage that came from expired joint feelers from our wards in the office.
There are many Nigerians who are just honest. They are misled into believing National Assembly, for example, every month a member of the House is given 150 million naira, a senator takes 300 million naira. You know, they know what it is. In the last assembly, Senator Shehu Sani, the comrade, told journalists that a senator receives 30 million naira for everything, his travels, his oversights, and everything. Initially, they said yes. But you know, a day after, they went back and said, no, Shehu Sani was lying.
Even where the country catches a slight cold, you blame it on the National Assembly. People forget that there's a very essential part of the much talked about democracy, which is separation of powers. And the reason for that ingredient in our democracy is simply because it is the only way to govern. Not one arm of government can do it all. Just like you have in your private establishment or company or corporate organization, there is a role for everybody to play.
The development director of the British High Commission says while lawmakers are performing their duties, they should consider making laws that are the most priority.
As you reflect on the implementation of the constitutional amendment, it is important to prioritise the needs of all citizens, especially at this challenging point in Nigeria's history. Autonomy requires responsibility. Responsibility to transparently manage and account for public resources, to hold those with power to account, to build an effective and vibrant social contract.
This conference is expected to bring about change that will improve the business of lawmaking. Nigerians will hope to see transformations that will affect their lives positively. Punarman Feintola, Arise News.
Well, thank you, Panariman, for that report. And for more on this, we're now being joined by MATHEW KOLAWOLE. He is, actually, that's KOLAWOLE. He is the Speaker of the KOGI State House of Assembly. And, of course, much later, we'll be joined by a Director of Programs of YAGA Africa. She's actually in our offsite studio speaking about Barrister Cynthia. In the meantime, let's speak to, the Speaker of the KOGI State House of Assembly. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so
Before
much.
we come to, the meeting that you had talking about the Speakers of the State Houses of Assembly as well as the leadership of the National Assembly, let's have a conversation about a very controversial issue now, the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, the draft which has been cited by our sister publication this day, and there are some controversial parts in it, especially about electronic transmission of results. That is not part of the draft. How are you receiving this?
Well, thank you so much. Talking about electoral law, is within the purview of the National Assembly. And so the National Assembly, there will be concurrence between the Senate and the House of Representatives. Sincerely speaking, as I'm seated here, I will tell you that we in the State House of Assembly, we've not had anything about the electoral amendment bill.
Yes,
so it hasn't got to us
our
yet.
Our sister publication cited it. That is one of the provisions in the proposed bill.
Yeah, but I think I would have say we wait till Tuesday, let it be laid on the floor of the House, then we can start criticizing it. But for now, if you want to criticize what we have not seen, I think what they saw.
It's not about criticizing.
It is already in the public space.
Okay, fine.
Criticism here is in good faith.
Okay.
Is that germane to the development of democracy in Nigeria? You go to Ghana, they are already voting and transmitting electronically. You go to Rwanda,
Namibia,
it is the same thing. Namibia.
Like
So why is it difficult? Why are the Nigerian politicians insisting on 17th century, way of electoral practices?
Well, if I will say something here, for us not to blame INEC at the end of the day, coupled with so many lapses in the area of networking here and there during election and transmission, it would have been the best thing that we follow suit. Let there be electronically transmitted results to the portal of INEC. But in a situation where INEC will come up to say, I cannot transmit, something happened all along the line, and you want to have your results. So I think at this point, I would align, maybe not because I'm a politician, but we allow INEC to be properly ready. 2023 is just by the corner.
INEC did electronic transmission of elections in Ondo State.
In
Are
Ondo
you
State.
aware?
No,
and it worked perfectly. And that checkmated the incidents, the often alleged incidents of rigging.
Yeah,
Ondo
Ondo State is one state out of 36. Out of 36. And if you are looking at what happened in Ondo State to happen to happen across the whole country. Sincerely speaking, I would want to say, let's wait till Tuesday, let it be officially laid, then let's go back to INEC. Are you ready? There's always an amendment to any law made either by the National Assembly or by the State Houses of Assembly. So I believe very strongly that we can always amend. It depends on public participation at this point.
We'll come back to you in the studio. Let's cross over now to our offsite and speak to CYNTHIA MBAMALU, and she is from YAGA Africa. CYNTHIA, thank you so much for joining us tonight on the program. And I do know that, the minute the news broke of the fact that this particular part of that bill, speaking about electronic transmission of result, had been removed. There was a statement released by 42 CSOs, including YAGA Africa, criticizing this move. CYNTHIA, let's get your thoughts on the draft bill.
Yes, thank you and good evening. I think what is important is that a lot of Nigerian citizens came together in the public hearing last year, December, to make proposals to amend the Electoral Act. And one major proposal was to ensure that the Electoral Act empowers INEC to transmit results electronically. And the importance of this proposal is to ensure there is some level of credibility in the result process. Now in our elections, the collation process remains the weakest link. And what we saw in Edo, so INEC in Edo tested it. They using this ZPad, they uploaded results, for instance, from the polling unit level to the INEC result portal. It was tried in Edo, it was tried in Ondo, and we saw the success of that. And what did it do? It gave citizens confidence in the final outcome of the elections, because you could go on the INEC result portal, click on your polling unit, and you would see your polling unit level results. Now that shows credible data on elections. And while civil society and citizens demanded and continues to demand for this provision to be retained in the Electoral Act, is because we've seen the importance of technology in promoting integrity in our elections. And the proposal is in the electoral bill, the initial proposal before this one we are hearing about, actually there was an amendment to that section 50 that guaranteed that that the proposal was for INEC to be able to transmit results. Now we are not asking for electronic transmission to do away with the manual process. It is supposed to be a complementary process to the manual process. So while the manual collation is ongoing, the electronic is ongoing. Why? You need double check and better oversight on the electoral process. And that way, candidates, people can go to court to challenge the outcome of the elections by relying on the data from the electronic process. But if this is not in the law, it means that even if INEC tries it to be a matter of policy, it means that you can't go to court to challenge an election's result by relying on the data from the electronic process. And we need this in our laws to ensure credibility in our process and to inspire confidence in the elections in Nigeria.
Well, Cynthia, we're still having you as well as the Speaker of the Kogi State House of Assembly. We'll take a look more at beyond even the electronic transmission, other aspects of that draft bill when we do come back from this quick break. And of course, you're watching Newsnight here on Arise News.
Okay, you're welcome back, and you're still watching Newsnight from the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Christian Ogodo.
And I am Amaka Ude.
We still have the Speaker of the Kogi State House of Assembly with us, MATHEW, KOLAWOLE, and CYNTHIA MBAMALU, who is the Director of Programs at Yaga Africa in our offsite studios. Let me come back to you, Barrister Cynthia. You've said so much. I mean, with over 42 civil society organizations kicking against that singular provision, Section 50 of the electoral bill that is going to be laid on Tuesday, do you have fears for this electoral bill that may become act, that it may not accelerate or solidify Nigeria's democracy as been expected after 21 years of practicing it?
Yes, there are real fears actually, which is why there are more than 42 CSOs, because several groups at both the national and state level were all, I think we're all at first taken aback and surprised that the National Assembly would try to rob the people of their desire and their wishes in the Electoral Act, because we are looking for a citizens' responsive bill. Now, why do we think there are specific amendments that threaten democracy and even our journey to having a system that people believe and finally have trust in the electoral process? There are specific important proposals that we are worried about. The first we had already started conversing on is the conversation around the attempt to prohibit INEC from adopting electronic transmission of results. The other is Section 65, the power of the returning officer to declare results. Then there's a conversation around electoral campaign expenses for specific offices. And I've talked about the transmission and why we think it is important, because over time, citizens have lost trust in the process. And the idea of this electoral amendment process is to once again give people the hope that truly our democracy can work for the people, beginning with sanitizing the electoral process, which is why the result process is important, because it will tell you their vote do not count. If this process, if the electronic transmission of results is adopted, it will begin to guarantee people that their votes would count. The other is the power of returning officer. Now, why is this important? If you remember 2019 elections, where one returning officer in Imo had said, I am declaring this under duress, that result was still, the declaration was made, and the declaration was done and return was made. When the case went to court, the same individual that the return was made in favor of was still affirmed. And one of the, why we raised an issue about that is because we know how our elections happen. At the level of collation, we've seen several malpractices happening. And one of the proposals was, we do not want the power of the returning officer to declare results to be final anymore. Because what this has done is, you have these political individuals, these candidates, who want to win at all costs. They go and manipulate the process to get the return, and then they want to go to court, which is why we've had so many cases in court after every elections, because people fight and manipulate the process at the level of return, and then they spend all they want to spend at the level of the court. Our proposal was for that particular provision to be amended to give INEC the power to review results within 7 days of when return declaration is done, especially when there is a suspicion that the result was not declared voluntarily, or it was not declared in line with electoral laws and guidelines. Now, why that is important is because it gives another layer of oversight and provides a level of supervision and review of the results before resorting to the court. That way, we reduce the role of the court in our electoral process. So it is quite worrisome that the National Assembly, 9th Assembly, would want to rob the people of their wish by deciding to remove this proposal and retain what we used to have before, which is that the returning officer declares is final until the electoral tribunal or the court overturns that. The other is expenses. In this era where we're talking about high cost of elections, how can the National Assembly be making a proposal for election expenses for the president to be 15
well, Cynthia,
billion,
you've actually just gone in the direction, I was going to take the Speaker of the Kogi State House of Assembly, MATHEW, KOLAWOLE, really, because, talking about the clause 88 in that Electoral Act Amendment Bill draft, which, of course, will be laid on Tuesday. And, of course, we expect a heated debate on Wednesday when it comes on the floor. There's a part that says it has tripled the expenses of INEC for presidential, gubernatorial, senatorial reps by 200%.
Even up to a councillor.
Campaign
expenses, 50 million naira.
Especially looking at the economy of Nigeria and globally looking at the fallout of COVID-19. Making our elections much more expensive. At this time, what are the implications of it?
Well, thank you. Let me quickly say something about what Barrister Cynthia said. I am not seeing the National Assembly robbing off the public by stepping down a particular section of the Amendment Act. Like I said earlier, there are legislative processes. And one of the legislative processes is when you lay a bill, first reading, second reading, third reading. In between, there's what we call public hearing. And when a report of the committee, like you said, will be laid on Tuesday. Whatever is laid on Tuesday is not final. It's still subject to public comment. It's still subject to debate on the floor of the House. There's going to be a debate on whatever report is being submitted. And at that point, I believe the CSOs who have come together, 42 in number, you say, they have every right to still protest, include this. And I'm very sure the Senate are representing the people. House of Representative members are representing various constituencies in Nigeria. They are representing the Nigerians. So at this point, there is still subject to say, yes, we want to align with you, we don't want to align with you. But they to have come, I don't want to talk about what I have not seen specifically as legislature. If I have seen the Amendment Act, well, I would know which area to talk about. Okay. But I think for now, why don't we wait till Tuesday, let it be laid, and let it be properly debated.
Okay, so you
on
can
the
talk
floor of the
about the
House.
cost of elections.
Yeah, the cost of
really.
elections, sincerely speaking, is worrisome because it's extremely worrisome. The system we run in Nigeria now has become the highest bidder. Whoever has the capacity wins an election, and I think it's not supposed to be. There's some credibility you should look in human beings before you even elect them into office. And when you say legislatures are not delivering, how would they deliver when they have spent so much money before they get to where they are going to? So to me, if there's a way we can, in the Amendment Act, if there are way they could, if it comes into the Amendment Act, certain amount of money to be spent. I know in my election, there are forms given to us that say we cannot spend more than this, we cannot spend more than this, but that is just
Officially.
a paperwork. It's a paperwork because so many things are happening behind that cannot be officially declared.
Okay, Speaker, let's look at the issue of trust in Nigeria's electoral process and maybe in this present democracy. Do you think the Nigerian electorate still trusts you as a politician and other politicians, particularly when it comes to the President of the Senate, even talked about their emolument? If a senator is earning 13 million naira, whether it's all inclusive, 13 million in a month in this adult time, and the people are not seeing what the former governor of Enugu State, Senator Chimaroke Unamani, called dividends of democracy when he coined that word. They are not saying it.
Well, trust is a very broad language, and by English meaning. Sincerely speaking, when you talk of trust, I think it has to do basically on who you are and the perception of people about you. When you are elected into an office, I'm a legislature, and by the grace of God, I'm heading the legislature, and I'm a government in my state. And I can tell you basically, sincerely speaking, if what I am going through as a legislature is what other people are going through at their various level of endeavor, I don't see anybody saying I have not done well with my little I am taking. Coming to National Assembly, if you say a National Assembly member is taking 13.5 million, my brother, if you look at what some legislatures are going through, some politicians, what we are going through, is more than what you are
saying. What are you going through?
Yes, what we are going through. Thank you very much. In the hand of the electorate that elected you, you must satisfy them.
With what?
With everything you have.
Like what? And what?
Like your money, your projects. You must empower them. And if I can tell you, if like my senator represents 7 local governments, if he's coming home with 13.5 million in a month, I can tell you he must go and look for money for somewhere to augment it. Because 13.7...
So you're saying the people are the problem? Yeah. Too much expectations from our leaders, is that what you're saying?
When you're talking of the expectation is higher than even the whole world. Somebody who wakes up in the morning, today I woke up in my house, I was showing my wife. I said, Madam, can you see what I'm going through? 10 to 15 to 20 messages, all his account number. And if you don't do, they will start insulting you. So where do you get such money from? Is it not from the little you are getting? And I must provide dividend of democracy for my people. You must think borehole. You must think, at the moment I'm building 2 cottage hospital. You get what I'm saying? So if you look at what you are getting.
So where do you get this money from?
Where I get the money from is from the little I am getting. I have to make sure that I am carrying the people along. But I can tell you boldly that what the senators are getting, well, it depends on how everybody is made. But I personally, I believe in one thing, that I'm going to give account of everything I do in this world to my God. So I try to do as much as I can.
You know what, we'd have to say thank you so much for joining us tonight on the program. MATHEW, KOLAWOLE, and of course Cynthia MBAMALU in our off-site studio.